So it's not a hot take that Supergirl was a miss at this point. Like, even if you didn't think the movie was that bad, like I personally thought it was just all right. Uh, it's it kind of does deflate a lot of the energy from the new DCU because it's just a lot weaker than a lot of people were hoping for. But what I think is a hot take is that Supergirl could have been one of the best superhero movies of in the decade, if not several decades. And honestly, there's a few points where it's kind of confusing why it sucked. But anyways, my name is Lady Grayce. I go by she, her pronouns. Welcome to my show, talking about the way that writing techniques make and break storytelling. And today, we're going to be talking about Supergirl, as well as the comic it's adapted from, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which I will heretofore be referring to just as Woman of Tomorrow. So the first question is, what is Supergirl and Woman of Tomorrow? The basic outline is a girl named Ruthie's family is killed by a man named Krem. Krem later shoots Crypto the super dog with a poisonous arrow, and Ruthie recruits Supergirl to help her get revenge. Next question. Why adapt Woman of Tomorrow? The basic answer is like, it's good, it's popular. If you go on like a comic book subreddit and ask, where should I get into Supergirl? They'll probably suggest Woman of Tomorrow. But, saying it's good is not a very good exploration of its depths. So, in more specific reasons, first off, it matches Superman in sort of its approach. Like, not only is it a more episodic sort of superhero movie, which James Gunn has been trending towards in his recent movies like Superman and Suicide Squad, it also sort of matches the approach to world building that Superman takes, where it's set in a very fleshed out and built universe, still on the early end, but a lot of stuff is already there. And we're just going to play around in it. Next off, it addresses Supergirl's backstory without obsessing over it, which I think is actually a deceptively important thing. Like, a lot of superhero movies try to sort of build the whole story around the main character's origin to make it more plot-driven. But the main issue with that is superheroes are inherently anthological in nature. They are designed to go on and on forever and face endless new and unique threats. Tying a superhero very strongly to a single story, can often happen when you're trying to centralize an origin story, can kind of make it feel like there's nowhere to go after a story ends. Future adventures can risk feeling tacked on, and a particularly good writer can still come up with good anthology adventures. But it's a lot better if you set a character up like they're an anthology character, and not like they're from a set story that has a set beginning, middle, and end. And next off, it shows off how fucking cool Supergirl is. Like, this is a bit of a tangent, but I think that the best superhero movies really sell you on the character. Like, they leave you with the impression that X superhero is the coolest superhero ever. That doesn't have to be a lasting impression. If you interrogate it, that might change, but it is the initial impression they tend to leave you with. Iron Man was so good at this, it launched an entire cinematic universe. Captain America Winter Soldier is the movie that made Captain America work as the second main character of the MCU. And my personal favorite example of this, the recent Superman movie. A lot of the reception of that movie was built in people who used to think Superman was lame or just not that relevant, realizing, oh no, Superman is awesome and more relevant now than he's been in years. And I think this would have been a great chance to do that for Supergirl, because Supergirl is not a character that has like great appeal to mass audiences. Like, everyone vaguely knows her, but no one's really sold on her character. Like, there was the CW show, but most people didn't like that, and she's been really good in My Adventures with Superman. But if that was enough to change public impression of a superhero, we wouldn't have had to wait for Superman to come out for everyone to realize Superman is awesome. And like, I can personally relate to this. I've always sort of wanted to get into Supergirl, but I've never really gotten into Supergirl. I was really hoping that this movie would do the trick. And it sort of did, but only because this movie was the thing that made me finally get around to reading Woman of Tomorrow, which had been on my to-read list for a while. And the movie itself doesn't really do a great job selling you on why Supergirl is the coolest. But all of this is sort of to the side of what I think the real reason Woman of Tomorrow is such a good story to adapt is, which is it's about observing Supergirl from the outside. Like, Supergirl is our main character, but our point of view character is Ruthie, the little girl whose parents were murdered. And Car's arc is allowed to be fully on the back burner until the final issue. Her character is allowed to be fully fleshed out and come from a fully fleshed out universe. And that doesn't appear to the audience, even if you're new to the character, because we're seeing her through Ruthie's eyes. We see her, the layers of who Supergirl is, get peeled back as Ruthie learns more about her. And I think that's a really great setup for the first movie about a character who hasn't had the best pop culture representation up till now. But now, well, first off, do you have any thoughts? If not, I'm going to move on to the miscellaneous changes. Before I get into the bulk of what I really think killed this movie, I want to pay it some compliments and also one critique or so. First off, I like the new space bus fight. The original was a lot of fun, but it's kind of based in two main things. First off, the artwork, which is absolutely beautiful, which the movie was never going to replicate. Like, I could do a whole other stream about why live-action superhero movies will never match the look of comics or look anywhere near as beautiful, but that's a different thing. The point is, Woman of Tomorrow is one of the most beautiful comics ever. A live-action movie was never going to match that. So they didn't even try, which I think is smart. And the other thing that the space bus fight is built on is a mythology gag about red kryptonite, which, like, I think is a very clever gag. It turns red kryptonite, and a material infamous for in the Silver Age just doing a whole bunch of random shit to Superman every issue or so, into something that is literalized better into canon. Like, in Woman of Tomorrow, red kryptonite is space drugs. It makes you hallucinate, but if you're a Kryptonian, the hallucinations are real. And that's a great mythology gag, while also building an actually very interesting but also crazy cohesive universe. And no one in the theater was going to get it. This gag relies on the Silver Age comic knowledge. If you're not already a comic nerd, you're not going to get the joke. So pivoting away from the original space bus fight scene, that's smart. And especially so because they did a teleporting fight scene. Like, I can't really represent it in screen grabs very well. And that's kind of the point. Fight scenes, teleporting fight scenes in particular, are best represented in film, where we can tackle things with both fast cuts and long, drawn-out impressions of movement. And it was really good. The fight choreography as a whole in this movie is really good, and I like it. Next up, I like the final fight scene. Again, the fight choreography is really good in this movie. I think it's like the main appeal of this movie. And like, I know everyone was memeing on, or at least critiquing this, playing a cover of The Middle for the final fight scene. I kind of liked that. The song's not that bad. But also, I think the fight is really good at showing off how cool Supergirl is. Like, it's the moment that tries hardest in the movie to sell you on her, because most of this is in slow motion with Supergirl doing 50 things at a time. It's really good. I also thought they were going to do something interesting here, where I thought they were going to, since they were early on focusing on Ruthie's reaction to the violence, I thought the reason she abandoned her quest for vengeance was because she would be overwhelmed by the violence and decide that she didn't want to be violent, even if she looks up to and respects Supergirl, and Supergirl was doing the right thing here. That's not what happened, but we will tackle more of that later. And next up, I want to say, I love Lobo. The writing on him was good. Jason Momoa's performance was awesome. Why the fuck was he in this movie? genuinely, I don't know why he was here. Like, so I knew the premise of Woman of Tomorrow going into the movie, and I knew Lobo wasn't in it, and I assumed that he was going to be the guy that Krem calls in when he realizes that a Kryptonian is going after him. Like, in the comic, Krem not being the type of guy who can typically carry a superhero movie or, go toe to toe with Supergirl is kind of the point. So what I don't understand is, sorry. So I thought it would be a really great idea, if you're going to make this a more typical superhero blockbuster, to bring in Lobo to be the muscle, essentially. He's also like a really good pick for someone to just be the muscle. Not only is he a bounty hunter, but so for those of you who don't know Lobo from the comics, and I'm going to do this introduction because even the movie is bad at introducing you to him, Lobo's thing is that he's Wolverine turned up to parody levels. He is a violent anti-hero who has a healing factor so strong that he is completely functionally immortal. He's a great choice if you just want like Superman or Supergirl to absolutely go to town on a motherfucker. You can really show off how powerful a Kryptonian is without having to worry about your main superhero killing a person. They didn't do that. He was just like after a different space pirate other than Krem. Like, he was just after a different guy. He doesn't really fight Supergirl in it. He doesn't do anything in this movie interesting. He's just kind of fun in there. And like, again, I like Lobo. He's one of the two good characters in this movie, the other being Supergirl. But like, either he should be better integrated into the movie or he shouldn't be there, because he doesn't do anything to help the narrative. He's just there to set up that Lobo exists. And next up, I want to go into thoughts. Yeah, putting Channing Tatum into Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, it was there to get people talking. He's there because people like either Gambit or, in this case, Lobo, and they wanted people to go, whoa, it's the character who's cool from the comics. I want to go see them. And I guess also to set up that they're going to be in other movies down the line. But, I don't think movies should exist to set up future movies and not be good on their own. But yeah, if no more thoughts here, we're going to get into the bulk of my argument. If you have more thoughts, put them in the chat. Once I finish this bulk argument, we're going to have another thoughts section. But we're going to talk about revenge, and more importantly, why this movie is not good at revenge. So, the central theme about this movie is about how revenge is bad, and the movie is very adamant that revenge is bad. They don't have this line. It's a funny line, but essentially they have the same thing of Kara, Supergirl, being like, hey, you shouldn't take revenge on Krem. That's a bad idea. The issue is, the movie doesn't really make a strong, coherent argument as to why revenge is bad. It just kind of leans on the audience to do it for them and assumes like we already know that revenge is bad because we've seen a bunch of stories about revenge where the conclusion is that revenge is bad. And you know what? Yeah, we have seen those stories. But because it's leaning so heavily on us to invent the subtext and the themes, it fails to create any of its own. So the story just kind of becomes standard and generic without any unique meat to it. And that's especially a problem because revenge stories already trend towards being boring and generic. Like, this isn't a hard and fast rule. A lot of the most famous stories in Hollywood are revenge stories, and there's a lot of very good ones. But, like, they tend to bend towards generic. If you don't either subvert it or subvert the typical revenge story or inject in some extra humanity that isn't usually there, specifically, I mean like a different vein of humanity more than just the I'm sad that because my ex died. They tend to revenge without that extra layer of subversion or reinvention. Revenge stories kind of turn characters into the same exact brooding, stubborn, violent, closed-off archetype. Essentially, it's convergent evolution, where every vengeful character just evolves into Sasuke Uchiha. And that's bad because no character should be Sasuke Uchiha. Not even Sasuke Uchiha should be Sasuke Uchiha because Sasuke Uchiha sucks. He's a bad character. So yeah, that's why you gotta subvert your revenge stories. But like, so when this happens, when Kara talks Ruthie down from killing Krem and then immediately stabs him herself, I thought they were gonna do something interesting. I thought the statement was gonna be like, revenge is bad, but killing to protect people, especially marginalized women, like all of the women that the brigands abducted, can be good or at least excusable. And then Kara says the line, "This is for my dog and that little girl's family." So it's just revenge. It's revenge all the way down. And because the movie fails to provide us any subtext on how to read revenge outside of revenge is bad, it's impossible to tell what the movie is trying to tell us. Is the takeaway supposed to be revenge is bad unless you're a superhero, or is it revenge is bad and therefore Kara is also bad because Kara took revenge? If that's the takeaway, I don't like it. Why would you make a superhero movie about how this superhero sucks? I don't think that was supposed to be it. I just don't think that the movie had managed to provide a thematic explanation for why this would be okay. And I would be open to it. And I know I would be open to it because when the comic starts setting this up, I am open to it. So the comic does have a thematic through line, and it's set up pretty well in the space bus scene before the fight happens. And for the record, this is obviously a much smaller scale thing than typical revenge, but stories tend to train you on how to read them by implanting smaller versions of their core conflict early on so that the themes can develop. But essentially, what happens here is this gross alien was leaning on Ruthie's shoulder, and she really hated that. So she basically says, "Hey, if you don't stop leaning on my shoulder, my friend Supergirl is gonna kill you." Which is a very silly thing, intentionally so. It's like juxtaposed with Supergirl asleep and not caring about this. But then, after the guy decides this is too much trouble than it's worth, we get this line. Well, this narration where Ruthie says, "I would like to say I had some satisfaction in the exchange, but in truth, there was no grand victory to be had there. Though I do concede relief that he was no longer touching me, still..." Sorry, this is less important. Oh, wait, no. Yes, it is. Still, the smell associated with him or the entire vessel, I could at that time not swear which it was and had yet to discover it was both remained. Essentially, the takeaway of this scene is that it's important to stop people from doing harm on you, but if you're just lashing out in aimless emotional anger, that doesn't actually do anything to help the underlying problems. Essentially, in Woman of Tomorrow, revenge is characterized as a temper tantrum. And that's really helped because in the comic, Ruthie is characterized as a child. And I don't just mean like she's literally a child. She's like 15 or so, in the way that a lot of stories will say a character is a child and then not treat them as one in the writing. Like the comic repeatedly characterizes Ruthie as a child who needs to be taken care of and shown the way to help to grow and develop properly. There's a few scenes to show this off. For instance, there's this scene where Supergirl teaches Ruthie to wash her hands because she's from a world without plumbing. Ruthie's world is a lot more medieval in the comic, by the way. Then there's also this other scene where Kara is going into a room to watch some footage of Krem commit war crimes, essentially, and she basically says, "No, this is too mature for you. You sit outside." And then there's my favorite example of this. Shortly after, in the issue after Supergirl gets her powers back, like she's exposed to yellow sunlight again, Supergirl still walks everywhere with Ruthie, and eventually that issue makes the point or explains that the reason she was doing this was for Ruthie's comfort and convenience. She never said this to Ruthie. She never asked her. She just realized Ruthie's not used to this and can't and would not be handle it perfectly. So I'm just gonna take a personal inconvenience to help her, which I like. It's again, Ruthie is a child. And this, of course, leads into Ruthie the child coming of age. Because at first, in both the comic and the movie, she's very heavily dependent on Kara, and in both, she grows on the Green Sun planet, where Supergirl is taken out of action by the Green Sun. But in the movie, it kind of stops there. Like, she gets captured by the brigands, thinks a way out of the problem on her own, and then it's back to being the Supergirl show. In the comic, it keeps on rolling into Ruthie's final duel with Krem. And yes, she has an actual duel with Krem in the comic, and it's so good. Like, I can't break it down without just halting the momentum of the stream. It's good. You should read it. And like, this is a very great showcase of how much smarter and tougher and more capable she has grown over the months she's journeyed with Supergirl. And because it's her coming of age story, even after Ruthie wins, she doesn't kill him. In fact, she finds that she can't kill Krem because she has just grown and developed too much. Essentially, Kara's guidance worked. The whole point of this story was to help Ruthie grow and develop into a better person, and it succeeded. And then Supergirl descends from the heaven and asks if Ruthie needs help killing him. So, taking some steps back, in like sort of the background, on the back burner of this comic, has been Kara's arc, which has been as Ruthie has been seeing the better parts of the universe via Supergirl tackling the injustices. Kara's been being exposed more and more to the horrors of Krem. And most importantly, the door scene, this is sort of the aftermath. There's also a panel I didn't include where Kara just doesn't realize Ruthie is calling her name. But essentially, the core emotional storyline of Kara's journey in this comic is that she's been trying to teach Ruthie a better way to find closure for the tragedy that destroyed her life without violence, only to realize that Kara has never found the same closure in herself, that she never got over the destruction of Krypton, that she has also fallen victim to the aching, angry emptiness that she was trying to save Ruthie from. And this all culminates in the moment her super horse dies, which, for the record, could have been matched in the movie with the timer to when Krypto's going to die of poisoning running out, and then you can hand wave that when it's time for the end, because you don't actually have to kill him because it happened off screen. But essentially, in the final hour of this comic, it completely reverses dynamic, where now the young, uncertain girl has to talk the strong, powerful, indomitable Supergirl down from committing a murder. So, like, I've got this, like, personal philosophy that a story becomes interesting when it deviates from expected norms. It can still be good if it executes on those norms well, but it becomes something new and unique and often more meaningful by changing things up on you in a way that your expectations for a medium or a story didn't necessarily provide. And this is the moment that happens to Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is the moment that Woman of Tomorrow goes from a very often told story that is executed well to something different and unique and interesting. It makes the whole thing more interesting in retrospect because you can go back and trace Kara's arc and see how it was leading here this whole time. So, like, I want to be nice to this movie. As far as I'm aware, it was the screenwriter's first project and, well, first produced project, and I did genuinely like parts of this. I have no idea why you would cut this beat out. Like, even if you're trying to jump off Woman of Tomorrow to be a completely different story, I don't know why you would cut this out. This is the most interesting part of the comic. This is the best written part of it. Why did you cut this out and replace it with the same generic speech of, oh, the people you lost wouldn't want you to do this thing that happens in every other story? Like, this goes from a really interesting moment where Kara succumbs to her own trauma in the same moment that Ruthie grows past hers, and the weak young girl has to talk the superhero down from violating her morals, to essentially the climax of Sonic 3. But yeah, that's the revenge section. I'm going to take a breather for a second. Do you have any thoughts? All right. If the answer is no, we're going to jump on to the next section, creme. So you can probably tell from the panels I've chosen, creme is very different in the movie, and I recognize it's kind of weird to take this long to address the main villain of the movie, especially when I've been kind of focusing on how things are changed from the comic. And Creme is far and away the most changed, and you can tell from this page where he is a very human schemer to this where he is a Mad Max villain. But like, I also kind of had to take that long because in the comics, he doesn't really show up and do anything until the last 2 issues. Like, haunting the narrative is the wrong term to use. I recognize that, but it is close to the emotional truth of it. Like, generally, we learn about Creme secondhand. When he shows up, it's generally for just a page or 2 before a new conflict happens. And we're mostly learning about him secondhand. And what we learn from it is that he's a really human villain. He has no special powers. He's from the same backwater medieval world that Ruthie is. He didn't even know space travel was a thing before he accidentally jumped on Supergirl's ship. And his whole story is just that of a man getting stuck in a difficult situation he doesn't understand and is above his head, and using his cunning, his quick wit, and most importantly, his complete and utter disregard for human life to not only survive, but thrive. Jumping off like partially what I think is a difference and partially what I think is important to highlight when talking about comic creme is that I think there's 2 main types of drama, or rather there's a spectrum of drama with 2 main ends that most stories oscillate between, which is personal drama versus operatic drama. Operatic drama is big and grandiose and concerned with massive stakes and very loud emotions. It's essentially the type of drama that happens in your standard superhero movie, where it's all about a giant evil bad guy coming out to destroy the world or launch a big alien invasion, whereas personal drama is much more intimate and concerned with complex, difficult emotions and smaller, but often more relatable and meaningful conflicts. I think the best way to illustrate it is Thanos' character in the original Infinity War is a very personal character. Like, he does a lot of operatic things, but all of his scenes tend to dwell much more on his personal arc and his conflict, both with himself and his family. And then we have Thanos from Endgame, where he's basically like, I'm going to destroy the entire universe and also kill all the Avengers, and you're going to have a lot of fucking Avengers if you want to fight me. I think this is also why people think Thanos' character is very jarring in Endgame, because it's essentially shifted modes. It goes from personal to operatic. And the purpose of personal drama is generally that scaling down your conflict and characters is done to tap into a more complex well of personal drama. And I think that this is especially important to remember when we're talking about the scene where Creme kills Ruthie's dad. Sorry, gotta jump back real quick. In the movie, the reason Creme kills Ruthie's entire family, it's not just her dad, that's also turned up to operatic, or slightly more operatic levels, is basically that like Ruthie's brother startled him when he jumped out of like a room because he didn't realize Krem was there. And then that just sort of snowballs into Ruthie's parents trying to kill Krem and Krem killing them in return. And like, I didn't get it when I first saw the movie because like I could tell that this is meant to be like a very personal and petty thing to do, but it doesn't inform anything complex about Krem's character. The only things it really tells you is that he doesn't like when he's startled, which he didn't even seem that startled because he doesn't like yelp or gasp or anything. He just sort of throws his axe when Ruthie's brother jumps out, and that and it also tells you that he's very willing to kill people, which like I guess is an important trait to establish for your villain, but evil guy who kills lots of people because he's bad is a very operatic type of villain character. And that's weird when the scene is so clearly trying to set up personal drama. And then I read the comic and I realized why it was like that. Because in the comic, the reason Krem kills Ruthie's dad is really fucking petty. Essentially, back on his homeworld, Krem was a spy for the king. His job was to root out the disloyal, and his modus operandi was to tell citizens a degrading joke about the king. And if they laughed, they were essentially signing their own death warrants. And Ruthie's father did not laugh. He did it right. He took offense to the joke and berated Krem and tried to kick Krem off his property. He did everything right. He was a loyal citizen like what Krem was looking for. But Krem couldn't stand the idea of a lowly rock farmer, because yeah, Ruthie's family are rock farmers in the comic, thinking that he was better than Krem. Like, to directly quote the comic, I wasn't on that field anymore. Instead, I saw him in my mind's eye, years after this, bending down day after day, clearing fields of their hard seeds, and all the while imagining himself my better, because he didn't like a joke I'd told. I was lost in this vision, and when I found my way out, my sword was in his gut. Essentially, this is also petty, but it shows you so much more about Krem. It shows you the way he's self-centered, that he puts his own personal drama and pain above anyone else. Like, his point was to come off as a grimy, vulgar dude who hates the king, and he's upset that someone thought that's what he was. He's got a clear classist disdain for anyone quote unquote lower than him. He makes himself into someone meant to be pathetic, and then gets insulted when someone treats him as such. Because for all of Krem's competence, his ego is just that easily bruised. It's a very human motive. And it really is a shame, because I think this movie could have been great. Not only does the focus on more personal drama sort of defy what is typically done with modern superhero movies, but there's a lot of reasons it could have been great. This story is essentially a variation of the typical dad game trope. It's God of War in space with Supergirl, and in this version, instead of it being about a dad protecting his daughter, it's about two women, which is not a thing you get to see in a lot of these like story archetypes. And it's allowing these women to take roles that they don't often do, especially in these types of stories, and potentially applying a more feminine lens. And it's also a shame because this movie tries to take a very feminist edge. A major plot point is that the brigands, Krem's group of evil Mad Max raiders, are capturing women so that they can assault them and reproduce. And this could have had a very, very human feminist edge about women fighting back against masculine oppression. But because it really fails to do anything with its villains except characterize them as really evil, and it struggles to set up the themes of how this story works, it also kind of bungles the whole feminism thing, which is a shame because you may have noticed this yourself. Superhero blockbusters really fucking struggle with women's stories and feminism. And like the core reason it's a shame is the same reason every failed movie is a shame. Because it could have been great. You don't have to do it exactly like the comic. The movie isn't trying to do it exactly like the comic. Like for example, the brigands in the comic are very space pirate. They have a really cool, unique aesthetic, and in the movie, they're Mad Max villains. And I don't like that aesthetic as much, but I don't judge it in the same way I judge other things because it's clearly not trying to do the same thing as the comic. I'm fine with it jumping off on its own edge. I've outlined a few ways in which I think they could have gone out on a limb and do things better in this presentation. But it just failed. It failed to do something great on its own, and it failed to capture the incredible heart at the core of the original. And that's just sad, because I really wanted to love this movie. And Melon, to answer your question, was not a big fan of Captain Marvel. That's part of what I mean by modern superhero movies struggle with feminism. They will try to do it, but then they will fail to characterize their women or like build their conflicts around the subject, so it feels very tacked on. And I have not seen Black Widow. But next time for my next stream, which will my next structured stream will happen next Friday. I'm going to be tackling the Thunderbolts movie because we're still on superheroes. I promise I'm taking a break from superheroes after this one. But mainly, I'm going to be talking about Thunderbolts in how it relates to the 3-act structure. But also, on Monday, I'm going to do a less structured stream that based on with a tier list. I'm gonna go on stream and I'm gonna rank every single character in the video game Honkai Star Rail with an obvious lean to how they're written. So join in if that sounds like something you're interested in. And as always, join our Discord. The link should be in our description. If it's not already, I will check it. I will check to make sure. I will make sure to put it in the description of this stream. But yeah, I'm really glad I got a chance to talk about this. I have really wanted to talk about my issues with this movie for a while, mainly since I finished the comic, and I haven't had a great chance to do that yet, so I'm really glad I could do that here. And thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.